So, I had a wonderful experience this morning walking around the Art Institute with Eric, who used to live here in Chicago, right?
For a couple of years, yeah.
And not at the Art Institute, but you were a guard at the MCA, right?
Mm-hmm. I put in my time.
And to cut to the chase, I got a great slow account of the early days of how he became an artist, which featured growing up in Long Island and eventually going to a college that he drops out of quickly. He goes to Haight-Ashbury, which he drops in other ways, and ends up in Phoenix for a while, and eventually ends up in the early days at Cal Arts. None of which you're going to hear because we don't have time. But what we will do is I think it was about 10 years later that we get this. I'm going to show you. I'll do it this way so you can see it too.
Okay.
And this would have been what? This would have been 1979, something like that, The Sleepwalker.
79, 80, something, yeah.
And this is where you first really, it seems to me, hit your voice, or distinctive voices, would you say that? I mean, that you found your subject in some profound way.
Yeah, I actually was working on this painting. I was educated as an abstract painter, and I wasn't a very good one. And I went through a very long transitional period, helped by being here in Chicago for a couple of years out of school, because I became enamored by the Harry Who and started to think about imagery and stuff in a different way than I had. But it certainly took me a while to find my voice. But I had a teaching job in Nova Scotia after I left Chicago, and a curator from Switzerland came through and included me in a show of 9 Canadians. And I was happy to be mistaken for a Canadian at the time. I had no alternatives, so. And it was with a very different kind of work, more strictly sort of image, language-based, conceptual stuff that he loved. And then after that show, I moved to New York with my wife, April Gornick, and we started working, and I began to make a more earnest transition into figuration, into narrative. And he called me up one day, said he was in town and would love to come by. And he came by, and this guy was a chain-smoking, hand-wringing, passionate art lover. And he comes in and he sees this painting that was not quite complete. And he just, his jaw drops. He's like upset. He's like, he starts pacing, smoking, hand-wringing. And, artists have a list in their head of everything they're afraid is wrong with their work, right? And if somebody comes in and touches any one of those things on the list, you go, okay, I got to deal with this, right? If someone comes in and they miss everything on the list, it's like, your own personal anxiety about it and blah, blah, blah. He hit everything on my list.
So what was on your list?
Well, it would range from, the fact that I had just become a totally retrograde artist, that I had abandoned the avant-garde, that the drawings sucked, the paint quality was, blah, blah. He went through like all these things, right? And I was showing him some drawings that I had done as well, and on transparent paper, and the line was too thin, that the transparency couldn't hold the form. I mean, it was detailed critique, right? And he leaves. And I'm like sitting there, my ears are ringing. The last thing I want to do is have to stop being an artist. And my head's racing, and I'm thinking, what can I do to make this contemporary? Well, I got to do something. And so I started to think, well, I could do this, or sometimes I would actually grab a brush and do this. Maybe I'll overlay another image on top. No, somebody else has done that. Maybe I'll, splash some paint around, and no, somebody, and every idea I had was somebody else's. And pretty soon I just found myself sitting there staring at this painting and thinking, well, maybe if I can make this arm a little better. And I just went back in and started to paint the arm and, change this and that and whatnot, and that was that. And it was one of these experiences where he had taken everything away from me except myself, which was really what I needed.
I was going to say that within a year you're doing this, which I don't suppose he would have liked much better.
No.
And yet this is really an amazing piece. This piece strikes me. It was the first of your pieces that I had seen, and I don't know whether you can see it really well, but given this strange kind of suburban scene, the thing that's the most amazing is the boy is pickpocketing the woman, her purse, at the same time. And this sort of imagery was just quite vivid and not even shocking exactly, just embracing at that point. And I'm going to go through. We have a lot of things to go through here, so I'm going to go through some stuff.
I look at this stuff and I mean, I remember why I was doing these kind of things. For example, the painting before Bad Boy. Other artists, my peers, we were all trying to figure out how to either painting was dead. And so there was a whole group of my peers that were making dead paintings to prove it. Mm-hmm. Or there were those of us who believed painting was alive, but could painting handle subject matter? Could it handle content, or was it only referential to content? Mm-hmm. And so there were artists who were using loaded content, like pornography, like you put Hitler or a swastika in anything, and it's already people are going woo. Right, mm-hmm. so you think, well, the painting must be alive because it's troubling people, right? So I was working off of that same sort of argument of trying to find out, how meaningful it could be. Mm-hmm. My friends were doing pornography. I thought, well, I'll do pornography too. I'll do a dirty painting, and so the painting before Sleepwalker started out to be just a somewhat tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, and then I'm painting it and struggling with it because what I'm actually painting is not dirty at all. It's a transition. It's a male transitional image. It's a very important time in a child's life, discovering their own potency and their own relationship to their body and to desire and whatever. Anyway, and I realized that this taboo that I had put on. Or I had just exploded for myself, and so it was about looking into other areas.
Were you in psychotherapy during this time?
No, no, that came later.
Okay. But I'm just showing a few others. You can see what I'm showing. One thing here is that not only was the image quite bracing, but it seems to me that it was very steeped in the history of art too. Am I off on that, or is that just?
You're not off on it in the sense that when you look at them together, there's a relationship that can be drawn. But I'm somebody who kind of rediscovered the wheel. Mm-hmm. How many millions of years after the wheel was discovered, it was like something where I would finish a painting and then I would go, oh God, that's, da-da-da, look at that, there's a resonance there. I mean, but in this painting you're showing, I did take the water from Homer.
That's right, yeah. Winslow Homer.
From Winslow Homer, who had done a painting.
He's also coming off of Jericho, actually.
Yeah, exactly, with his painting, The Gulf Stream, which is where I took it. So there is that thing going through, and it's more archetypal, I think, than it is specifically referential.
Here's another raft painting in a certain sense. A boy and a lady on a raft.
I've done a lot of paintings in the course of my career with where the bed is very much an important arena. Yeah.
This one here, I just wanted to show you something interesting. This is a really striking, powerful image, and we're at, it's called Daddy's Girl, and we're in 1984. One of the things that I find quite striking, this is a really troubling image somehow, and yet the photograph that you used as the basis is not at all troubling, it seems to me. I mean, in other words, It's a much milder.
I was doing this painting at a point where I'd had some serious success, and I'd become known as the psychosexual suburban drama painter, right? And it had been one of those things where you could feel the expectations were there. People wanted to have that experience. And I thought, I wonder if I could do a painting that wasn't, that was actually incredibly sweet, touching moment.
This is your attempt to do that?
Yes, completely innocent. Well, you saw the photograph, right?
Yeah, no,
it's like this wonderful moment where a father's hugging his child and stuff like that. And so, anyway, so I did a couple of things that derailed me. One was that I took them out of a crowd and put them in alone. And the other was that I took the clothes off. And all of a sudden, I'm, as the artist, thinking I'm failing to achieve this sense of innocence, that there's something that's troubling me as I'm doing it. And so I started scrambling, and I put the mother in on a chaise lounge next to them. And then I feel bad about copying out that, so I took her out. Anxiety didn't go away, so I put the gardener in. So I got a gardener who's watering the plants along the house
that'll
and
do it,
stuff, thinking, nothing's going to happen. I mean, the gardener's there, right? So, and then again, I thought, you're such a cop-out. There's actually nothing wrong with what's happened, what you're seeing. It just, blah, blah, blah.
Now, how many years before psychoanalysis are we here?
I might be in it at this point. Yeah. But anyway, at one point, I actually painted myself in the painting, sitting at a table at the back, looking out with just this so lost expression. I just really didn't know. And then I knew I was in deep trouble by doing that, so I painted me out. And finally, I just put that glass of tea right on the edge of the planter.
Oh, that settles it. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
And somehow the whole thing came together. And it did because it implicated the viewer. That glass sits halfway between you, the viewer, and the what's taking place. So you're involved in some way, which is either fine or it's not fine.
Well, moving forward, you put yourself in this picture in the portrait of an artist as an old man. Not much after that. I just wanted to do a trill of my own.
It actually isn't me, but it's a projection.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or
it's me now. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, this is the future of the past and the present. There you go.
Yeah.
The yesterday's future in the present, as we heard yesterday. But I just want to do a series of riffs of my own off of this and see whether I'm off. It strikes me that this image is riffing off of Francis Bacon. And that, in turn, which is interesting.
You say ripping or riffing?
Riffing. No, not riffing. Riffing. Riffing is nice. Ripping is. What's interesting about Francis Bacon's painting is that is riffing off of Van Gogh. And what that painting suggests is this. And what's interesting about this painting, there's a wonderful moment in John Berger's Ways of Seeing where he shows you this painting, and then he says, turn over the page, and I'll make you never see this painting again the same way. And you turn over the page, and he's written, this is the last painting Van Gogh ever did. And it seems to me that all of that is kind of built into that. Am I wrong?
Yeah, not so much the, thinking directly of Bacon or whatnot, but the wheat field was very much a tip of the hat to Van Gogh. And of course, in my painting, it's as much about a certain kind of loss of power, creative and physical power and stuff like that. So the blank canvas is important. That thing that so inflamed Van Gogh's imagination and stuff. And here, there's a
so Van Gogh at the end is not having trouble with blank paint.
Yeah, exactly.
There's, by the way, if you remember, in Lust for Life. the extremely literally minded Kirk Douglas, Irving Stone version of Van Gogh's life. They literally do a birds-like thing out of Hitchcock where he's trying to paint and these birds are attacking him and those birds.
My God.
Anyway, moving forward, again, we're going a lot faster than we should because we have a lot of other stuff we want to talk about. But this, I think, is just an amazing painting. You want to talk about that for a second? This is 1983. Still, we're in that period. A visit to, a visit from the island.
Yeah, this is one of those paintings where they. I think a lot of it has to do with the privilege of being an artist, and a privilege, an even greater privilege of being a successful artist begins to kind of pull one's life apart. You know, there's the ease and pleasure and stuff like that that are accessible, and you know, it begins to get a distance to what dramas are, real life dramas and stuff. And this was at a time when the Haitian boat people were fleeing like crazy, and there was
they were washing up on the shores of Florida.
They were washing up on the shores of Miami and stuff. So I set out to do this painting that tried to collapse those two things in, and it's one of those things where the you know, there's a point in abundance and ease that creates ennui, and you know, it triggers in me a desire for real action, for, you know, a taste of real life. And so you then see people who are really struggling to free themselves of and make for a better life and risk and die for, et cetera. And you think that's real. And so I painted that, and it was so terrifying to me that I ran back to the other side of the canvas to like try to breathe, you know, and take in the pleasure and the simplicity of it, et cetera, et cetera.
It's also just amazing. The visit to this is the islands people go to for
right, that
vacation.
one person's heavens and others hell, et cetera. But what I found is that both are so extreme. You can't stay in either place very long. And in fact, you know, my life for sure is that crease down the middle between the two paintings that I try to navigate. And
I'm just going to show quickly, just to give people a sense of some of the work that they might not be as familiar with. At one point, you did a whole series of paintings about India, which are just quite striking.
Yeah, India was an amazing experience because unlike most of my hippie brethren, I never really had the fantasy. I never took in I hated the smell of patchouli oil and stuff, and you know, I never had a fantasy about going to India or embracing Hindu or Buddhist or, you know, whatever. But I had this opportunity to go to India in a way that I felt. I also was terrified of going to India because I'm not a great traveler, but I had a way of going that made it, if I ever was going to go, this would be the way to go, kind of thing. But I went without a sense of, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to make paintings of India, and it's going to be this incredible experience. What I found, of course, was that I had just landed on a planet so foreign to me that everything was amazing, and I don't think my mouth closed the whole time I was there. Either I was agog at what I was seeing, or I was throwing up.
Agog at what you were seeing and agog at what you were eating.
Yes, exactly. The thing that, in a way, it was like a perfect time for me to go because I'd been sort of taking the clothes off of everybody and making these social scenes, you know, sort of naked, socialized beings kind of thing. And here I was in a place where, of course, everybody is completely covered. And it's a different kind of body language, and it's incredibly mysterious, incredibly beautiful, and you know, it's just like the opposite of what I had been doing, and it really compelled me. But I knew I would never actually understand this culture at all. The day we were driving back from Agra, and there was we were being driven. You can't drive there, but we were being driven, and there's a guy hitchhiking with a bear. And I thought, You know, I don't know anybody who's going to pick up a guy and his bear. How do you know, anyway, so.
Moving along, I'm going to again speed up a bit, but there, just to give you another sense of these, he has a whole series of paintings he did in Rome, which are quite striking. This one here I think is quite amazing because this is, of course, the Saint Teresa, and for everybody who thinks that you're the first person in history who's done kind of crazy, weird, suburban, or orgasmic imagery.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not that far from that.
Right.
And then this one here, which in turn strikes me as being in some relationship to that one there.
Yeah, this is the portrait of the artist as an old incontinent man.
Okay.
I'm sure you can't see it in the...
He's peeing, yeah.
There's like a pool. He's peeing or something.
Well, like a pool, exactly.
It's actually called, what is it called? Fear,
yeah, it has
remorse.
Anger, remorse.
Anger, remorse,
But
or
what I love here is,
incontinence.
in this one here, it's kind of like the missing mother and father on the chairs.
Yeah.
And this one...
And here's the angry father.
And there's the angry, well, God, or whatever it is. But anyway. And then this one here, I was looking through some of your work. I'm struck by the slide projector there. To what extent? I mean, it's clear that you use. Do you directly use slide projector occasionally when you're
Never.
drafting? But you take photographs as kind of sketches in some sense. Or?
I do that, and you know, I mean, I'm going to approach that a little bit differently, which is to say that, you know, when you're making a painting, you try to figure out point of view, where not only is the action taking place, but where are you putting the viewer? Because where you place the viewer determines so much about the emotional and psychological engagement that they will have with the thing that they're looking at. And in this case, where there's an explicit kind of sexual act going on, you know, I put in front of, between you and that, this still life, which is made up of things that are relatively incongruous with the moment and make the whole scene hard to explain. You know, there's the projector, which, you know, as you were thinking, may be a projection of the image itself, or it may be something that they're using to titillate themselves into a
it's something that allows us to project into the picture all kinds of ideas.
And it is literally that projection device and stuff like that. And then there's the coffee cup and the half-drunk tea, and then the cigarette which is still burning, as though maybe you're there as a director. Maybe this is a porno moment, right? And you become the director in some way, implicated in a very specific way into this scene.
Well, that becomes even more when you do the Krefeld series, which you might talk about for just a second here. This is an example of how did this series come about?
The museum in Krefeld, Germany owns two of Mies van der Rohe's first modernist residences, House Esters and House Langen, that are right next door to each other. And they use them for exhibition spaces now. They invite artists to come and do shows there with one stipulation, that it has to in some way engage the architecture. And so when I was invited to propose something, I said, well, you know, I paint people, and I paint people in houses, and this used to be a house. So what I'll do is I'll refurnish the house, and I'll hire a couple of actors as though they lived in this house, and I'll take a bunch of photographs of them, and then I'll...
A whole bunch of photographs.
A whole bunch, about 2,000 I ended up taking, yeah. And then I'll go home and I'll make some paintings, and we'll put the paintings in the rooms where this action took place in.
So
there was this is a sunroom, there was a living room, there was a dining room, and a bedroom and a bathroom were the 5 rooms that I
It's
worked
an
with.
amazing series of works. One of them we've talked about a lot is this one here, which it was somebody suggested to me, and then I tried this out on you, that this was clearly based on a cello. Is that weird? I mean, the circular thing, the parquet floor in both, the dragon man with the wings of shadows and all this kind of stuff, and I did a whole thing that it must be, and then you said it's not, right?
Not in any direct way, but
Yeah,
again,
right.
No, it was actually when you said, look at this, it was like, oh, wow, look at that, that's true. You got the spiral, and you got these slats and this sort of stairway
Right.
structure and that, and, et cetera, et cetera.
And
it was interesting as a compositional thing, but of course not.
Yeah, you both hit the same thing. Anyway.
Actually, in my painting, I think that the dragon is slaying George, so. Or Georgette, let's say Georgette.
Right. So anyway, I'm going to go a little bit faster here just because, again, I want to get to some stuff, but just, again, more beach work. And then you had a whole series of bullfight images, which are quite powerful. And then just toward the end, I just want to show some more and more portraiture. That's April, right?
Yeah, this painting, it's called The Gang, and it's a painting of my friends who are writers and poets and photographers and stuff like that. And we have a community out in Long Island and spend a lot of time together and a lot of time on the beach and stuff. So it's a commemoration. Mm-hmm. It's a painting that also very self-consciously fits into a tradition of these sort of group artist portraits, and I was just asserting my generation into that flow. But I have to say, it's the first painting that I've ever done where everyone's smiling, which
you're feeling better.
Probably doesn't mean a lot to you, but to me and my therapist, it meant a whole lot.
Speaking of smiling, Steve Martin.
Yeah.
This is and we could go on for a while. This is his wife Annie, who used to be my fact checker at the New Yorker. This is a terrific painting. I really like this painting a lot. And then in terms of your paintings, this is a self-portrait. This actually is a self-portrait.
Yeah, this is a self-portrait of me in front of an unfinished painting. And, it's a...
Is the painting itself finished, this painting?
No, that painting became that painting.
I see.
Right.
So,
I was actually working on that painting. And somebody had said to me, when was the last time you did a self-portrait? And I have done very few self-portraits, and usually I'm in some kind of costume, or in some way I'm sort of...
You're goofing.
Goofing, right? I've really never done a kind of straightforward one. So I don't know, just said it, and I thought maybe now's the time. And so I'd been working on this kind of grouping, as I say, of friends in the beach and stuff like that, and I just put myself in front of it. And what was fun about making this painting was actually trying to figure out what is the language, the paint language, that tells you this is an unfinished painting, but the whole painting is finished. Right? So what's a finished, unfinished
I just want to make
painting?
clear, by the way, this is the actual unfinished painting that you painted yourself on top of? Or did you paint a new painting of yourself with the unfinished painting? Did you paint the unfinished painting? Did you start with a new canvas?
No, that's it. I
right?
just paint myself in front of it.
Huh.
But, yeah.
Anyway, so that gives a sense of the kind of work you've done and the kind of issues that might show up, because in 2011, of course, we get to 9/11.
I didn't do that.
You didn't do that. No, that's not one of yours.
That's not my work.
But that is.
Oh, yeah, that says not the right way, too. But
Oh, dear.
I don't think we can flip it. It should be so she's on her shoulders rather than... it should be horizontal.
I see. Okay. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
But this is in some way your response, and partly to that, with the tumbling woman?
This is, yeah, as 9/11 actually was happening, I was surprising myself in the midst of, my terror and fear and anguish, that I also was thinking, if artists are needed, now is the time. And so I, starting with that day, I set out to try to find some way that I could address the tragedy. And the experience itself was so complicated, besides being so horrific and so tragic. It was further complicated by the fact that 3,000 people died that day, and we didn't see any bodies. So it was like a disappearance. And I don't know if you remember, but it was very soon after that day that the people started talking about the architecture and talking about the loss of the architecture, the loss of the buildings, and how to mourn the loss, how to rebuild, how to send ghost lights up into the sky to commemorate the loss of the buildings, et cetera. And it was like, it was, I think, precisely because we didn't see evidence, physical evidence of dead bodies, that we couldn't process this thing. So for me, it was important to make my response take the form of a body. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was that there was a very brief moment when we certainly heard about, but we saw briefly this images of people jumping or falling out of the buildings, which terrified us to no end. I mean, that drove home just exactly how horrible this event must be, because people are choosing one form of death over another. And that just is so hard to get our heads around. And then it was censored. The media self-censored and wouldn't show it and stuff like that. But it was indelible. And I think we all had nightmares and stuff after that. But anyway, so at some point I came up with this idea. I wanted to do a body. I wanted it to be a female. I really believed that the female still carried, the nurturing, the vulnerability, the symbolic and metaphoric aspects were still intact. And I didn't want to make it graphic in the sense that it is actually depicted in this, which is the literal falling, because I wanted to not only address the tragedy of those who died, but actually I was more taken by what happened to the country afterwards, which was that the country became destabilized and began to go into free fall. And I just had this image of sagebrush tumbling, just rolling, that thing bouncing into this, stopping for a while, rolling on, et cetera. And so the title of this piece is called Tumbling Woman, and it's about sort of just that kind of perpetual thing. And one of her arms is outstretched, just sort of waiting for people to grab it and to hold on. And anyway, that was my
but another
response.
thing, in terms of the tumbling country and so forth, trying to make contact with that, was indeed this America Here and Now project. We have a video we can show, but do you want to introduce how this was related to each other?
First, let me say that I showed this piece. My dealer, Mary Boone, was able to get this Tumbling Woman shown on the first anniversary in Rockefeller Center. And it was put up, it was unannounced, it just showed up on the day of the anniversary, and people freaked out. And within 2 days or a day, it was covered up and taken away. And, besides, and then there was some very nasty stuff said about me and how I was using this tragedy to further my moribund career, which, was very hurtful. I started to think what actually happened here. And part of it was, as I said, the reminder of the body, the reminder of the corporeality and the death and stuff like that. And also part of it was a disconnect that America has to its arts, and the arts has to America. That it wasn't a knee-jerk reaction for Americans in big cities and small towns across this country to turn to their artists, their poets, their playwrights, filmmakers, etc., and say, this is the worst and most confusing time for us. Can you help us out? Can you give us a language? Can you give us experience? Can you give us some way that we can wrap our hands around it, that we can empathize and safely, that we can connect? And so I thought, if Americans aren't going to do this, then I would. And so I came up with this idea for kind of a traveling art experience where I asked, as Annette said, 150 artists, poets, playwrights, musicians, filmmakers, if they would create a work of art specifically about America. And that, we would try to find a mobile way of moving it. These mobile marketing trucks have been designed that fold out and stuff, and you can make a museum out of it. And the idea was to put this work on, travel around the country, going into places, engaging the local creative talent in all of those places to enter into a conversation of local perspective, art perspective, et cetera, ways of sort of just generating a civil conversation about art and stuff. And so it was something that we began 7 years ago now.
There's I'll just show a 2-minute video, which gives some sense of what it was like. Let's see.
This moment is a moment of confusion for us nationally. And so the time is right to examine precisely who it is we are, what we believe in, what our values are.
Eric decided that he wanted to be in a bigger conversation about America. And what he said was that he had a great feeling that America was thinking about itself, that Americans were thinking, what is America? Who are we?
The America Now and Here project is a project in which 150 venerated American artists, poets, playwrights, singer-songwriters, and filmmakers have created a work of art specifically about America post 9/11. And we're taking that out on the road with the intention of having that work that's in the show begin the conversation.
It's a start at a nationwide dialogue about the role art plays in society and how we define ourselves by our culture.
What we want to do is find creative language that people can use to renew their sense of where they are, how they look at the world, how they look at each other.
Just get people talking to each other in a very real and concrete and meaningful way. Get people grabbing hold of each other's, consciousness and saying, I'm over here. Where are you?
The exhibition as it travels around will be a catalyst for local artists to be viewed and celebrated and seen as part of the overall fabric of the art world in the United States. And I think that's the value of this exhibition.
This is a more direct reaching out to the public to get them involved in thinking about art, feeling about art, experiencing art.
It's gotten you thinking, what more can art do?
Did it work?
No. It partially worked. What didn't work was the big vision of it, and that was a financial problem that, this thing was initiated at a time when, just as the market crashed. And so it was doomed in that regard. We did do some events, some exhibitions. Kansas City was a big one for us that showed exactly that I was right. That there was a incredible energy and exchange and stuff that came through this that was incredibly healthy and provocative and fun and et cetera, et cetera. And then most recently, I was asked to do to jury a show that was a national exhibition taking place at the Buchanan Art Center in Monmouth, Illinois.
Yeah, this is the thing that when I went to see you about a month ago, you just got this amazing letter about this. Well, just give a little bit of the background.
Yeah, give a little background for it. I was...
Let me show you where Monmouth is, which is going to be right there. It's West Central there.
I was contacted by the director of the Buchanan Art Center, Susan Toomey, who asked me if I would do it, and I said that I would love to do it, but under one condition, which was that she asked all the artists submitting work that they submit work about America based on the three sort of thematic categories that America Now and Here had established. Which, by the way, let me say that, when I asked the artists that were in America Now and Here, these are artists, you don't go to Jasper Johns or, Marcia Norman or Edward Albee or, et cetera, and say, I want you to do something about America and I'd like it to be like this, right? You just ask them and hope that they, aren't going to just shit all over you. And so it was a crapshoot, but I was surprised at how incredibly sincere the art that came back was, and also how self-organizing it was. It fell very comfortably into three categories as kind of, loose thematic categories that were ways of thinking about America. There were America as icon, America as place, and America as people. Mm-hmm. And the work had all these very interesting sort of perspectives within those loose categories and stuff. So I asked Susan if she would ask the artists that were submitting to her.
Now, this is just a little art center. I understand there's like nothing like it for 50 miles in any direction in the middle of farmland, basically.
Yeah, I think
the town
Monmouth is like 9,000 people.
Right.
It's a farming community.
Yeah.
There's a Monmouth College there, and anyway, and I'd never been, but anyway, Susan said that she would, and the response from the artist was phenomenal. I mean, I gasped when she sent me the CDs to do the preliminary selections from, because it was like 600 works or some. I wasn't quite thinking in those terms.
So just moving forward, when I went to visit you a month ago, 6 weeks ago, you had just gotten this letter from her.
Yeah.
Because you'd been a bad boy.
Wow.
Well, what had happened was that, well, not a bad boy, but of the work that was sent in, you had chosen a really, really rough piece, a tough piece, as one of the winners. And it was a commentary on pedophilia and in the Catholic Church, a ceramic piece that was, just to give you some idea, it's pretty blatant stuff. We don't need to look at it for too long, but so I was you showed me this letter you just gotten, and you were trying to figure out what to do about it. It began, "Dear Eric, I'm writing this letter to you today because I don't quite frankly know what else to do. I'm truly stuck between a rock and a hard place. When artists, well, wait a second, it occurs to me Susan is here, and we could, is Susan out there? Susan
Yeah, she's
Toomey?
right here.
Right over there. She's a pretty amazing person, what she's doing there. And maybe, Susan, you can read the letter, actually, because it's a pretty incredible letter. And I thought we'd let her read it and then let you talk about what the solution to this problem is. So, Susan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for asking me to.
Can you, is it working? Let's see.
Hello?
Okay. Very good.
Dear Eric, I'm writing this letter to you today because I don't quite frankly know what else to do. I am truly stuck between a rock and a hard place. When Artist 505 sent in their works addressing pedophilia and the priesthood, I really struggled about what to do. I agree with the viewpoint of the artist 100%. I was, however, truly worried about the backlash that those works would bring to the Buchanan Center and the conversations that we were hoping to build. I thought about it for a few days. I truly struggled with the issue of censorship. It isn't the message that bothers me, it is the delivery. The images are extremely graphic, with digitized photo decal images of consenting adults and up-close and personal viewpoints. I was hoping that the lack of artistic merit would be the end of it. I knew that there was a chance that you would choose one, and I decided to stick to my principles and submit them, secretly, I suppose, hoping that you would be proud of me, that I didn't censor, and thereby wouldn't punish me by choosing them. I will admit that I was heartsick when I saw that you chose not one, but all three. Those choices tripled my worries. Thank you. I'll try not to shake it out of my hands. I stayed true to your choices and finally reconciled myself to constructing a spot where the pieces would be in the exhibition, but not out in the middle of the room. I warned my board that with these pieces there may be repercussions and to prepare for them. As you know, my 89-year-old father had been helping me to install a show. On Thursday, I started expanding the spot where I hoped to place the priest pots, and I unwrapped one. My father went ashen. There's a long history between myself and my family and religion. I'm the one that the Catholic Church didn't capture. And while that's a sidebar story for another day, it certainly was an issue that colored the discussion that followed. It actually wasn't a conversation, but it was a divisive, hurtful, and painful moment between my father and myself. My father left. I felt nauseous and spent the rest of the day either in tears or feeling the rise of anxiety. My father returned the next day. I could tell he hadn't really slept, and I hadn't either. He told me that he had been up all night thinking and had decided that if these items were on display, it could ruin the BCA, and that I may indeed lose a majority of my funding. We had a short discussion about the message that the artist was trying to send, or at least I did. I don't know your political persuasion. I would consider myself, liberal. The rest of the family is decidedly right-wing, as is the majority of this community. I learned a long time ago that civil discourse with such polar extremes is generally unproductive, just hitting my head against the brick wall. I also know that the graphic nature of these works won't start a conversation, it will end it. My dad told me, after much thinking, that he would pull his support from the BCA. On a personal level, that kills me. My father is in his 89th year. We have worked hard over the last few decades to put our differences aside and focus on the love we have instead. Each Sunday, I go to my parents to have breakfast with them. It's been a wonderful tradition to begin. I was gone from home for a very long time, and I am so busy at work that finding time to see them is difficult. This morning, it was quite obvious that my father still hadn't slept, nor have I. He really didn't speak to me, but followed me out to my car to reiterate that not only could the funding go away, but that a poisonous board member that I had endured, another sidebar for another day, would like nothing better than to use this as a springboard to oust me from my position here. I have no doubt that he's correct in that assumption. When I came to the BCA in 2008, I found a small rural community art center, nearly shuttered, and with a huge deficit. I have worked around the clock for 4 years to bring her back into the light and to help build community using the arts. We have an annual operating budget of $125,000. That includes everything. Salaries for 2 people, lights, teachers' salaries, art supplies, programming expenses, children's theater productions, classes. We're the only institution like this for more than 60 miles in any given direction. The loss of funding from the Toomey Foundation, along with several others, would devastate the BCA. And others, knowing that my father pulled funding, would follow suit in a heartbeat. Although it may seem easy to think that my father is being unreasonable, I have to remember the time and generation he came from. A large portion of our membership and funders also come from the same time and generation. I also have to bear in mind that the award monies are financed through the foundation, and one is named in honor of his deceased sister, Mary Jane. My Aunt Mary was a lovely woman, kind and very devout, and a true innocent. Even if I could convince him that the pieces should be displayed, any attachment to memory of my Aunt Mary makes that impossible. So much good has come from having this center here. I know you saw the piece on the Lost Boys. That's one small example of the joyful moments and tender mercies brought about by using the arts as a catalyst for change. These moments have brought joy and hope and renewed sense of vitality to our community. Thank you. I can't tell you how happy people are knowing that this show is about to open, that you're coming here. The artists are thrilled. The sense of pride that people feel is palpable. I have struggled to reconcile my feelings and what I suspect the outcome will be if I don't make a decision that will bother me personally, but would potentially cause the closing of this center. I feel that if I use these works in the exhibition and additionally honor one with an award, I would be burning down the library to save a book.
So, so you showed me that letter 6 weeks ago, and I said, well, now you've got it.
Yeah.
But I thought rather than talking about how this got solved, I want to throw it open to the audience. Can we turn on the lights? What would you do? Come up to the person standing there. Just come over here and start. Yeah. So you've got a situation here where it's just, do you censor? Do you, and so forth? What?
I would ask the editor of the local paper if I could publish this letter publicly.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Think about doing that.
What other?
Probably not,
Come
right?
on up here, and let's talk about this. I mean, it seems to me this is America here and now, right
Yeah.
there. This
Yeah.
seems to me to be absolutely what your idea was about.
Yeah.
This kind of dialogue, and yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think this is really a complex. The letter brings up a whole host of issues about the arts in America, but one thing that strikes me is arts education, that we as a nation don't have the ability to dialogue about arts like we used to, and to understand context and how art, a particular piece of art, fits within a greater context. So what occurs to me is, while perhaps not putting the piece in the show, spotlighting the pieces, and creating context for the audience. Educate the audience. I think about, because I do theater and like to tend toward the avant-garde, I've heard, and I do not know if this is true, but it was told to me by a German artist that in Germany, prior to a difficult show or a show that the audience might not have context for, they put the talk back before the show, and then the audience watches the show instead of after, so that there is context and understanding prior to the viewing of the work. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think it's interesting you kind of censored the work here and now by not showing it to us for any length of time.
I'm sorry, what?
You censored the work by not showing it to us. You're asking
You
us
didn't
to
leave the
put it.
image.
I didn't leave the image
So
out
you
for a long
didn't
time.
you didn't
Yeah.
treat us as adults.
I mean, I can.
So
Are you asking to see it tomorrow?
I mean, it's good to see in this environment.
Okay,
Say, hey, we're urban,
okay,
we're
I'll be
progressive,
happy.
but in fact, you didn't give us the
By the way,
opportunity
the name of the
to be
artist
viewers.
is Joe Pinkelman. Joe Pinkelman. It's a little bit hard to see, but it's basically All kinds of
Yeah, they're-
saccharine,
they're,
flowers. Oh, you describe it.
Yeah, there are store-bought vases that he decals with flower arrangements, scripture, and images off of the internet or whatever, porno images, and he's linking all of that stuff up, the decorous and the indecorous. And
Why did you like it?
I didn't. I felt like I would be going against a principle if I censored it. That I knew where it was coming from, and it's not poorly executed. But to be quite honest with you, when I felt like I had to take it all away and stand behind it because it represents this larger issue. But then I got Susan's letter. And the artwork, I have to say, took me to a place I already knew about in a intellectual kind of way, right? The kind of certainly knowing about the news of it and stuff like that. Having myself never been sexually molested by a priest, I didn't know that experience. But I sensed also in his work that this was not somebody who had suffered greatly from it. It was more of a political statement based on gathered information. And then I get Susan's letter, which is so wrought with the complexity and trying to figure it out, and the complex layering of personal relationships and intellectual and ethical issues and this, and a commitment to the community and a commitment to her art center, et cetera, et cetera. And I was in tears reading this.
One of the things that really struck me about this is that you sent America Here and Now to try and explain New York to the country, and this is explaining the country to you in a way that I don't think you were expecting.
Yeah, well, I wasn't quite trying to send New York to...
Okay,
but it was perceived as that.
Yeah, okay,
for
but
one
in
thing.
any case,
and we spent a lot of time trying to break that image down. But
this really breaks it. This really breaks it down. This is the country talking to you in a way that you weren't necessarily expecting.
No, and I had personally, I had no problem, as Susan knows. I wrote her back immediately, said absolutely pull the work.
Well, let's hear from some other people before. Go ahead.
I own a gallery in Moline. And we had exactly the same situation. In fact, we just closed and dismantled the show. We had a young woman, St. Ambrose University, art department, and they were all graduates. And before I mention you that, I really thank you for your letter. I thank you for the honesty and the directness with which you have written and shared your feelings, and taken the courage to do that, because it's a very difficult step. My gallery is run by a not-for-profit organization, and I have a board also. So this woman had brought in pictures, which she did not show earlier, of very derogatory pictures of women. And we're a gallery, we're not an art center, and my purpose is to sell this art as well as to encourage it. And I told my board, I said, I can't ask to give you a graphic idea. It was the genitals of a woman being shown in public for the viewer. And the technique was very bad. The image of the women's faces they were broken women. So it was not very pleasant at all. I couldn't tell people who are collectors to come and buy this art. And I told my board I cannot represent it. And I asked the girl to, very gracefully, what is your message? She couldn't tell us what her message was, as a young artist in her late 20s. And so I asked her to remove the art. She brought a police along. It was quite a drama. But frankly, after that, I lost a lot. There were 9 artists. We lost 3 because of that time, and after that, we lost 2 more. It's a stand you have to take. At what point? They considered it censorship. I didn't think it was censorship. It is not the message of the gallery or our institute. And the technique was very bad. I too have a right to see what to show, right? But it has affected, and these are the local artists in the entire, what is now almost 500,000 population. It has a very big art gallery, an art museum, so it's not a small area. And it's affecting that whole section. So yes, this is America here and now.
Where is yours?
Yours is a commercial gallery?
No, not
Ours
for-
is, it's kind of commercial, but it's to support an institute that we run. And so there is, across the river is Davenport, and we have the Figure Art Museum. And this is America here and now. What is interesting is that there were 3, in that area, you don't get large turnouts. We had almost 300 people. They ganged up against us and put sheets of paper saying that we're not supposed to show it down the street or something like that. Right. So this kind of network against people, if you do not show the art, is also significant.
Let me draw some other people in, but thank you for that.
I have one more thing
Go for it
that I would like to
quickly,
say.
'cause we're
It's
ramping.
coming back to what you said with the 911, and I think it's important. NPR had a show after the first year of 9/11, asking for artwork to be submitted. And I followed the whole thing. At the end, they said they were surprised about the mediocrity of American art. And they made an announcement about that. I feel that is significant to what you said earlier, because I was going to bring this out later. But if you have time, I'd like a little discussion on that.
Let's hear a few more comments.
Thank you
Yes,
again.
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Interested in Eric's comment, art as a catalyst for change. It doesn't always happen, but it can happen. And I think the community and the artists and everyone have to say, what are we afraid of? At the worst, may we be thinking an invalid, wrong painting, or it may be something that's really brave, and this disturbing part of it is something that we should come to terms with. So what concerns me is that people are afraid to face something that is negative, and I think we have to take away those barriers. So I would not be afraid to show almost anything.
Just one more comment quickly, and then.
I would think we're all afraid, to watch the negative. I know some of us may have watched the presentation that talk about this is shocking, from yesterday, the 5-car stud. How could you show that? I really like the idea of the context of talking about it, maybe at Monmouth College, the local community college, and other kinds of places, because to the extent that this may be something presentational, the tradition, if you go back in that area, you've had people burned out there. That's along the river near Nauvoo. I mean, you talk about things where real things happened. But I think to engage as many people as possible and even present this material and some of the background things within that context and try to generate the community arts in that
So what
way.
did you decide to do?
Well, I wrote to Eric and decided that I needed to take myself out of it and remove my own reluctance to censor something and not put them in the show, because what we have in Monmouth is really important, and it really was going to put it at risk. And on balance, I decided to burn the book.
Rather than the library. But you've gone further than that in a way, right? I mean, you're publishing the letters.
Oh, yeah, no, we, well, so she took the bullet, told Pinkelman that she wasn't going to show the work. He responded in the most generous way. He's somebody who lives in a small town, or a smallish town in Southern California, has a relationship to a local community arts center and stuff like that, knows full well that they would never show his work or this work. He's actually quite a gifted ceramicist and does beautiful stuff that isn't political or provocative in this manner. This was something, he felt he wanted to do. partly, I think he felt he wanted me to see him.
Right.
And he was actually honored that I chose his work, even though it was censored, which is whatever. So that's another.
And all these letters are
complex
appearing
thing.
on the website of the...
But what we decided was we would run, the America Now and Here website, starting, I think, today. We published your letter, and we're going to sort of roll out my response, and then your response, and then Pinkelman's, and sort of just get that out in some way that people can sort of follow it along. And
Well, I just think it's an amazing story, and I really thank you for coming out.
And I did have people could see them in my office. People knew they were there, and people did come to look at them. They just went out in the gallery. So it was.
We're near the end of the whole festival, actually, and I just thought I'd close this session with a poem, which I think might appeal to both of you, which is by Wisława Szymborska, the Polish poet. She wrote it during martial law in Poland. An opinion on the question of pornography, it's called. There's nothing more debauched than thinking. This sort of wantonness runs wild like a wind-borne weed on a plot laid out for daisies. Nothing sacred for those who think. Calling things brazenly by name, risque analyses, salacious syntheses, frenzied rakish chases after the bare facts. The filthy fingering of touchy subjects, discussion and heat. It's music to their ears. In broad daylight or under cover of night, they form circles, triangles, or pairs. The partner's age and sex are unimportant. Their eyes glitter, their cheeks are flushed. Friends lead friends astray. Degenerate daughters corrupt their fathers. A brother pimps for his little sister. They prefer the fruits from the forbidden tree of knowledge to the pink buttocks found in glossy magazines. All that ultimately simple-hearted smut. The books they relish have no pictures. What variety they have lies in certain phrases marked with a thumbnail or a crayon. It's shocking the positions, the unchecked simplicity with which one mind contrives to fertilize another. Such positions the Kama Sutra itself does not know. During these trysts of theirs, the only thing that's steamy is the tea. People sit on their chairs and move their lips. Everyone crosses only his own legs, so that one foot is resting on the floor while the other dangles freely in midair. Only now and then does somebody get up, go to the window, and through a crack in the curtains take a peep out into the street. Thank all of you, thank Eric, and thank you so much, Ethan. Okay.